Welcome to this retrospective slash review for Fallout New Vegas. And just go ahead and I made a little recording earlier today of me doing various things in the Vegas area, just to kind of have something play in the background, basically. I'm also going to be doing a lot of stuff out of character for me in the game because, well, I would get caught pickpocketing quite a bit. So there might be a little bit of blood and guts for people that you wouldn't normally see in the video, but that's okay. So I just want to give my quick rundown on and thoughts about the game, and go ahead and admit also right up front that there's just a huge ton of content in this game, and I did a lot of it. I did do a lot of it, but there's still quite a bit I did not even begin to come close to accomplishing. For instance, there's three story DLCs that I didn't even begin on. And, technically the max level in the game, even with all the DLC, is 50. But I will say one of the things that I feel with any like Bethesda style game like this is once you start to get up in level, the challenge really does drop fairly quickly, to be completely honest. Now I know this game it's supposed to scale with your level, but it doesn't really scale that much, to be completely fair. But let me just roll back just a little bit. So what I did was I used a mod list guide website, basically by the name of Viva New Vegas, and they have two distinct ways of setting the game up. What I did was the base install of Viva New Vegas, and what that is basically is mostly just bug fixes, utilities, things of that nature. It doesn't really go into heavy modding detail on the game. They have what they call Viva New Vegas Extended, which does a lot more, not only graphical overhauls, but also gameplay overhauls. Just a lot of stuff to kind of really make the game more modern. Because originally the game came out in 2010, so it's been a while. Not quite a decade and a half, but getting pretty close to it. So I just wanted to focus on stability for my first playthrough because I've never played the game. And I kind of wanted to just get an experience of it without, further improvements that the community has done. And, like a lot of these games, I got to go ahead and say that the community is just massive, very dedicated, and continually adding new things and improving the game. And that's just a great feature for any of these type of games. And it's heartening to still see it getting very good support even in present day. But there's a lot of really good old games that get this sort of treatment, but I feel these Bethesda type games, they really get the treatment more than most, to be honest. But that's a good thing. I give that props for that. And I will say another thing with the Viva New Vegas patches and everything that was done, for the most part, this game was actually very stable. I did experience some crashes, some lockups where the game would just completely lock, it wouldn't load or anything. And it's probably more than I could count on one hand, but I definitely could count it on both my hands and not need to start over again. So it wasn't so bad that, I had to make sure I saved every 15, 30 minutes because I might have a game crash and lose progress. So that wasn't the case. And even when it did crash, usually there was an autosave, right behind it. So I didn't lose any progress at all. I don't think ever, really, when I did have one of these crashes. So from that perspective, I'd say pretty much mostly very stable. I wouldn't I would not say it was not stable at all. It was very stable with the patches. I was a little worried with some, like especially when I got towards the end of the game, that I might run into a bug that would completely lock me out of a quest line. So the bug fixes that I had applied even remedied that possibility as well. So definitely, if you're going to play Fallout New Vegas, I highly, highly, highly recommend playing with Viva New Vegas. I can't speak to how good the extended version is. I'm sure it's actually very good, and I will probably get around to trying it out again in the future. But if you want as close to what it was like when it was released, Viva New Vegas base install. It doesn't take a long time to set up. I probably got it done, I don't know, maybe 2-3 hours or so. And that's probably stretching, to be honest with you. It was very quick to set up, very easy to set up, and 100% worth it to go through that setup procedure for Viva New Vegas. It'll make the game, your experience, most likely vastly improved, because I've heard reports, or whatever you want to call it, that the game was very buggy and unstable when it was released. I can't attest to that, but I could definitely say not anything that I experienced personally. And so, like I said, not many huge graphical updates were applied. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I almost never heard my GPU fire up and the fans really get going to cool things down. So even though the game, I feel, still holds up graphically, it's not very resource intensive on your computer. I I don't, yeah, I can't even really honestly tell you when I ever even heard the fans spinning, or even spinning right now, basically on my computer. It's like my graphics card was just like, okay, this is fine. I don't really need to worry too much about the game, but I think it looks great. So even if you have a older computer with not a super current graphics card, I think the game will still perform very well for you, and is definitely still holds up even to this day. The music is very atmospheric, and honestly, it has a lot in common, at least in my opinion, with say like the Elder Scrolls games. I definitely got that vibe from a lot of the music. I know it wasn't done by the same person, two completely different composers, but still very similar type atmospheric music, and that's good. I like it. It's definitely different, I'd say, than Fallout 1 and 2, but overall, I'd say the music definitely fit the mood of the game very well, and it was definitely worth listening to for sure. Let me see here. Now, one thing I definitely would like to point out, like a lot of Bethesda games, and I know that I say Bethesda games, this is mostly done by Obsidian Studios, and I haven't played a lot of Obsidian games, but you know, this is still had a lot of input from Bethesda, as it was based off of Fallout 3, the engine and everything. So as a Bethesda game, the main quest, like most of them, it just felt like a framework. And I don't want to take too much away from it, but the main draw of the game, at least for me, in my opinion, was all of the side quests in different areas that you would come across. And there's just so many side quests, so many areas in the game, and there's just a lot I didn't even get into and look at. So just a huge ton of content, huge amount of things to do in the game. But at the end of the day, the actual main quest line wasn't really that compelling, in my opinion. And it just seems to be a big recurring theme with a lot of these games, whereas the main quest line really falls off, comparatively speaking. But in my opinion, on this game, is like the main quest line was even almost even more understated, if that is the best way of saying it. It's because it just felt like a framework. I mean, it was almost like, what am I doing right now? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be going into Vegas and hunting down Benny. It's like it wasn't as interesting as all the side stuff I was doing. It's like I didn't just kind of forgot about it. And then after Benny ran off, it was like, okay, who cares really at that point? So it's just like, yeah, it felt more like a framework, and there just wasn't a lot of incentive to really get going with the main quest line, at least in my opinion. But that's pretty par for the course, I'd say, for these games. So I don't want to make that sound like a big criticism of it, but I just don't feel like the game itself was um, the main quest line was, it was just there for lack of a better word, really. Um, but yeah, most of this just dealt with, the side quest and things of that nature. Now, I did recruit every single companion in the game, which I would probably not suggest doing that for your first playthrough. The only reason I did was to get an achievement. And so from that perspective, I did have to go around and make sure I recruited every single companion, of which there are 8. You could have one of the humanoid companions and one of the non-humanoid companions at a time, so up to 2 companions at a time, basically. And there's only really 2 of the non-humanoid companions. But for the most part, I can say pretty much all the companions, at least in my opinion, they all felt very unique, and they had good qualities about every single one of them. Now, I feel like Lily and Raoul probably had the weakest side quest of any character of the companions, because there wasn't a lot of direct things that you could do with their side quests. In fact, it was all just a matter of they would ask you something. It wasn't something that showed up in your quest log. Let me put it that way. Now, to be fair, I didn't really do anything with Arcade Gannon or Boone. It would have been good for me to try and do that, but their quests are very specific about, you have to earn their trust to get their side quests going. And by the time I actually looked into doing that, I had already got far into the game, to the point where it was very plausible that I wouldn't be able to trigger their main side quest. And that's why I basically didn't do them, other than just to, recruit the guys. So I can't really comment too much on those 2 characters, especially Arcade Gannon, because I didn't use him a lot. I will say this about Boone on the one hand, though. You're definitely not going to use him if you want to, team up with Caesar's Legion, because he got me on the Legion's naughty list very quickly in the game when I just accidentally stumbled into a camp that had a bunch of Legionnaires, and he just started laying waste to them. And then, of course, then from there on, I was on their assassin list. In fact, I would say that the Caesar's Legion Assassin Squad was probably one of the more challenging aspects of the game, because they would just come out of nowhere and waylay you. And that was, for the most part, a fairly consistent challenge within the game. So, other than that, though, I would definitely say that the game, much like Fallout 1 and 2, the main challenge really is at the beginning of the game, when you're very low level. You don't have a lot of equipment or money, and that really is part of the main problem, is because it takes a long time to really get that money coming into the game, so that you can really get your equipment going to help out. Now, again, to be fair, part of that may be due to the way that I basically hoarded a lot of stuff in the game. And I did hoard quite a bit of stuff, probably over hoarded most of it, to be completely fair. Especially like when I was getting ready for the final battle at Hoover Dam, it was like, man, I got a lot of junk in here, and I probably don't even need, a quarter of it That's how much junk I had when I started doing things there at the end. But yeah, this game is basically a hoarder's nightmare, like most of these games, definitely. But at the same time, there's a lot of skills in the game, a lot of variety, a lot of things you can do with the crafting system, whether it be cooking food, making medical supplies, doing your own ammunition, which I did do quite a bit of. Um, I would definitely say, probably, if I was going to say some of the perks, what some of my favorite perks were, it's really difficult to get. But when you get jury rigging is really amazing in this game. It makes things flow so much easier once you finally get that repair of 90 and you can start, mixing and matching things and just repairing all the stuff. It's a huge, huge boost to the game. So jury rigging is probably one of the best perks, in my personal opinion. Um, Shotgun Surgeon, another extremely awesome perk. And there was one site I kind of followed a little bit, give me some sort of idea what perks to take and which ones not to take. And at the time, I was like, do I really want to do Shotgun Surgeon? And then when I went back and got it, I was like, yep, you do really want to do Shotgun Surgeon. It makes the game, that may have also contributed a little bit to the lack of challenge, especially once I started getting going with Shotgun Surgeon, because you can just knock people down with that perk, and that definitely helps out immensely. I felt like the VATS system in the game, some people like it, some people don't like it. Personally, I liked VATS quite a bit. In fact, one of the only things I really planned to do ahead of time, from a character build perspective, is I wanted to make sure I had the correct perception to get the better criticals and the sniper feat. So ended up better criticals, definitely worth it. Sniper maybe not as good, but at the same token, it did help out quite a bit because I would use VATS a lot. And if you use VATS, something like Sniper is actually a pretty decent perk, to say the least. Like I said, that I followed the guide a little bit that I had online, and I'll put that in the description field as well. But especially as I started going to the game, I just started mixing and matching whatever perks I found at the time. Could you have built your character better than I did and more focused? Absolutely. 100%. I was just kind of grabbing things as I went along, but I still was able to do everything in the game pretty effectively, even without a super well planned out character progression roadmap, as it were. I would say most of the quests in the game were fairly easy to follow without a lot of going to the guide, as it were. Now, I did reference my guides every now and then, but I can't say that it was one of those games where I just had to have that guide at the handy and ready to go at a moment's notice, because I would get lost in the game. That didn't really happen too much. There's only a few times where I felt like I needed a guide to just get a little bit of clarification about things. Now, what I did need, to keep on hand was a list of like the miscellaneous items, so I knew what was junk that I could sell and what I wanted to save as far as crafting. And that's also probably why I ordered so much stuff, is because I had that at the ready on my laptop over here, so I could actually look and see what was good and what was junk, for lack of a better word. And I probably could have definitely sold more equipment as I was going along, and I could have got more caps and better equipment. But my conservative nature, especially early on, definitely worked against me, most likely. But once you get around the mid-20s or so, I'd say the game's challenge really does start to drop off substantially. Having a good offensive capability will definitely help out for you, whether that be guns or energy weapons. But I would say that energy weapons is a viable tactic if that's what you want to focus on from the word go. You can definitely do that and do it well. I would say just about everything, all the skills, they all have uses, in my opinion. Um, I do feel like it would seem like, in my opinion, that melee and unarmed builds probably would have it a little more difficult. But at the same time, I mean, well, you have a good example right there with Rex and Veronica. Um, just they get there and beat people down. So, power armor makes a big difference in the game, to say the least. So even though I feel like guns and energy weapons are probably the best offensive skill to take, my next playthrough I'll probably focus somewhat heavily on melee. And so when it comes to achievements, that's kind of a few of the ones I didn't get. I didn't get the 10,000 damage with melee and unarmed weapons or explosive weapons. And that's a completely different skill set as well, explosives. So I didn't really use anything like missile launchers or grenade launchers too much because I had very low skill. And in that case, low skill actually does work against you. So that's something to keep in mind. One thing I'll say that I found out as playing through the game, there's a lot of callbacks to, say, Fallout 1, Fallout 2. Like, for instance, like when I got to Jacobstown and Marcus was there, I was like, wow, that's cool. That's Marcus from Fallout 2. And so that was really neat to see that. But there's just a lot of those little callbacks here and there that I just thought was pretty neat, to be fair. Oh yeah, and like I said, now you're going to start seeing me kill people that I normally wouldn't be killing. But so I definitely enjoyed all the callbacks. I would say from a faction perspective, there's just a ton of factions in the game as well. A lot of them are very unique and good, and you want to ally with a lot of them, but you kind of have to pick and choose who you're going to ally with and who you're going to work for, because a lot of them are kind of at cross purposes with each other to a certain extent. But it's I'm about to say the only thing that I thought was a little bit of a downer was how bad the Brotherhood of Steel was, like, completely and totally downgraded in this game. I don't know. I like the Brotherhood of Steel, and it was just seeing them be so, I don't know, minimized was a bit disheartening, but it is what it is. In fact, when I was playing through it, I was able to make them better, as it were, and they even helped me out in the final battle for Hoover Dam, so that was good. Now, the one story DLC that I did play was Honest Hearts, and I don't know if I gave a really good review of Honest Hearts, but I'll try to briefly go over it now. I thought Honest Hearts was actually a pretty decent DLC, at least in my opinion. It felt a little disconnected from the main game, and part of that may be the fact that I just didn't go up to Camp Golf, and in Camp Golf there was Chief Hanlon there. If you had talked to Chief Hanlon, there was, he gave you a little bit of background as to who Joshua Graham was, but he's really the only person that mentioned Joshua Graham in the entire game. So I did Honest Hearts before I even talked to Chief Hanlon. So from that perspective, Honest Hearts felt very disconnected from the main game. not only geographically but thematically as well. So, a little disconnected. I don't think I'll play it again, but at the same time, I thought it was a very unique graphical distinction from the main game. Just being there in the Utah area, it looked completely and totally different, like it should, because it's a completely different area of the country. But they did a good job of it not being, it was like, okay, we're going to take the same meshes and whatnot, and we're just saying now you're in Utah, but it looks exactly like Mojave. So they did a very good job visually there in Honest Hearts. The storyline itself was actually pretty decent. I thought it was not bad, but at the same time, I've played through it once, and I don't see any reason to play through it again. So take that, as you will. Is that a knock on the game, or the DLC? Possibly, but I'd say it's pretty decent. Not bad overall. But really, at the end of the day, this game, very, very huge amount of items in the game. Some of it junk, some of it not junk. There's a lot of weaponry types to use as well. So it's a very well-rounded game, and just a lot to absorb, and a very good time. I thought the game was good, but in my opinion, once you get to a certain level, things start to, like, there's no challenge, and so from that perspective, I didn't want to really keep playing. I mean, if you want to knock out all the DLC and get most every achievement that you can in one run, you can do that actually. It just, I don't know, it feels like it would not be, it would just be going through the numbers at that point, really, and I don't think it would be worth it to continue to play, even though I could go all the way to level 50. Once you're in that mid-20s, early 30s, that's really about the highest level I would play through on my first go, or even your second go, because at that time, it's just going to get, it's like, okay, who do I got to kill now? And they can't do anything to stop you. And that's pretty much true. So, as far as the game is concerned, I would say, from a score perspective, this is, of the 3 Fallout games that I've played, here within the last half year or so, definitely by far my favorite of them. It felt like a good culmination of everything that you did in Fallout 1 and 2, and here's where things have gone to. So it felt very good from that perspective, something better and new, really, really neat. I don't want to give this, a 100 score, because I don't know, it's not quite there, but I do think it is very good. Probably about a 95% or so, maybe even a little higher than that. Very, if you're going to play just one Fallout game, I could easily recommend this one as a Fallout game worth playing. I think it's just masterfully done. Obsidian did a great job, and I think it's definitely worth your while. So we'll say a 95% as far as a final score, and definitely give it a shot. So this is technically the Ultimate Edition, but it's I think if you get it with all the DLC, whatever, on Steam, it's available on pretty much every platform. I think, I don't know if it's available on, say, Nintendo Switch. I'd have to look into that, to be honest with you, but I know it's available on, like, PlayStation, Xbox, obviously Steam. I think GOG, you can get it there as well. That's your preferred storefront. So the game is very widely available. You'll see it in just about every storefront that there is. Like I said, I don't know about Nintendo Switch. I feel like the Nintendo Switch could run the game, but I don't know for a fact if it's there or not. So don't quote me if it's being on Switch or not, because it may very well not be on Switch, but it could also be there. And I feel like if it isn't there, I don't know why, because I feel like the Switch could definitely run it pretty easily. But anyway, yep, that's all my thoughts on Fallout New Vegas. It's a great game, really great game, and a good introduction to the Fallout universe. If you've never had anything, if you've never tried a Fallout game, definitely worth playing for sure. Well, anyway, thank you very much for watching this video and watching all my stuff go through in the background. And yeah, I hope you all have a great evening, and I'll speak to you later. Bye.